Your services are no longer needed." The words hit me like a clean, brutal strike to the face, so sharp and sudden my stomach lurched hard enough that for a second I genuinely thought I might vomit right there on the polished mahogany conference table I had personally selected 3 years earlier. 15 years of my life, 15 unforgiving years spent building this company from the ground up, and they erased all of it with 7 careless words and a room full of empty stares. I scanned the faces around the table. Men I had worked beside for more than a decade, men whose children's birthday parties I had attended, men who had called me at 2 in the morning when systems failed, deals collapsed, or crises they created threatened to implode the company. Now they suddenly found the grain of the table fascinating, eyes fixed anywhere but on me. All except Warren. CEO Warren Blackwood met my gaze directly. His expression was carefully neutral, but there it was, the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth he couldn't fully suppress. Satisfaction. "My name is Maggie Lanier. I'm 43 years old, and until 9:17 a.m. that Tuesday morning, I was the COO of Meridian Healthcare Solutions. Before I go any further, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories that remind you just how ruthless boardrooms can be." "We've decided to take the company in a different direction," Warren said, his voice coded in the polished authority that once impressed me. "Ethan will assume your role effective immediately." Ethan Donovan, the son-in-law who had been here barely 7 months, the same man who asked me last week what HIPAA meant, the same man handed a VP title the day after marrying Warren's daughter, Kira. "I see," I said, my voice sounding far away even to me. "And when exactly did the board vote on this?" I looked toward Thomas, our CFO, who had texted me just yesterday about our usual afternoon coffee. Suddenly, his notepad demanded his full attention. "Emergency session last night," he muttered, one I hadn't been invited to. "They replaced me with a 32-year-old former hedge fund brat whose greatest accomplishment was being born into the right family and marrying into another. HR has prepared a separation package," Warren continued, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table toward me. "Generous, we're not monsters, Maggie. But monsters at least don't pretend." I didn't touch the envelope. 15 years, I said quietly. "I was here when Meridian had 17 employees crammed into a converted warehouse in Somerville. I signed our first hospital contract. I flew to Singapore with food poisoning to salvage the Eastwood deal when no one else would get on the plane." The silence was suffocating. I could taste their guilt, metallic and sharp. "We value everything you've contributed," Warren recited, "but Meridian needs fresh perspectives. The healthcare landscape is evolving." "Fresh perspectives," I repeated. What he meant was his daughter wanted her husband in a corner office. What he meant was I had become too influential, too essential, too visible. What he meant was I had become a threat. I stood. My legs were strangely steady despite the emotional earthquake ripping through my chest. "I'll clear out my office." "No rush," Warren replied with synthetic kindness. "Take the day. Security will assist you." Security, as if I might steal something, as if I hadn't already given them everything. Weekends, holidays, relationships that collapsed because I was always working. I missed my father's last birthday to close our Series B funding. I postponed freezing my eggs because next year will be calmer. Meridian had consumed my life, and now they were escorting me out like a liability. I walked back through the halls past the curious stares of my team. My former team. Corporate news spreads faster than wildfire. I could already feel people shifting loyalties, recalibrating ambition. By noon, congratulatory emails would be landing in Ethan's inbox. My office, overlooking the Charles River I rarely had time to appreciate, felt unfamiliar. Awards on the wall, family photos, nieces and nephews mostly, no children of my own. Emergency heels under the desk. Artifacts from a life I had just been evicted from. I grabbed a cardboard box and began packing. 15 years reduced to one box. My nameplate, the pen I used to sign our first $1 million contract, a framed photo of the original team, everyone gone but me. My throat tightened as I reached for the small jade plant on the windowsill, a gift from my mother when I made COO. Growing steadily, she'd said, just like you. It had thrived despite my neglect, unlike my relationships, unlike my fertility, unlike, apparently, my career. A soft knock broke my thoughts. Natalie, my executive assistant of 6 years, stood in the doorway, eyes rimmed red. "They've already asked me to work for him," she whispered. "I told them I needed time." "Take the job, Nat," I said, surprised by my own calm. "Your mom's medical bills matter." She nodded, tears slipping free. "They're saying you mishandled the Westlake acquisition, that costs spiraled, that's why." The lies had already begun, rewriting history to justify betrayal. "We both know that's false," I said quietly. "Westlake is the most successful acquisition Meridian has ever made." "I know," she whispered. "Everyone knows. He wants your files, your contacts, everything." Of course he did. Ethan couldn't function without my blueprint. Tell him company policy requires a formal request through IT. Two could play the procedure game. After she left, my phone rang. Unknown number. I nearly ignored it, expecting hollow sympathy from colleagues too cowardly to show up in person, but something made me answer. "Maggie Lanier," I said, professionalism snapping into place out of habit. "Maggie, this is Josephine Vega." My breath caught. CEO of Helios Medical Networks, Meridian's fiercest competitor, the woman Warren liked to sneer about as that barracuda in a pantsuit. The architect behind innovations steadily eating into our market share. "Josephine," I said carefully, "this is unexpected." "I'll be direct," she replied, voice sharp but warm. "I heard what happened. I want to meet today." Meeting Meridian's biggest rival on the same day I was fired violated multiple clauses in my contract, but I was no longer under contract. "Why?" I asked. "Because Meridian just made the most expensive mistake of its corporate life, and I'd like to profit from it. The Langham Tea Lounge. Come alone. Let's talk about turning this setback into the best opportunity you've ever had." The line went dead. I sat there, still technically employed for another hour, phone in my hand. 15 years of loyalty discarded for nepotism. I looked at the box holding my life's work, then at the jade plant, thriving despite everything. My phone buzzed. Security ETA 20 minutes. They wouldn't even let me walk out alone. As the numbness faded, something else surfaced. Not just anger, something colder, more deliberate. Warren had always misunderstood me. He saw a loyal workhorse, not the steel beneath. He mistook my composure for compliance. I added Josephine Vega as a contact and slid the severance packet into my bag unopened. Whatever they offered would never compensate for what they took. Security arrived, 2 men I had personally approved for hire last year. They looked apologetic but firm. "Just doing our job, Miss Lanier." "I know, Paul," I said, lifting my box and straightening my spine. Everyone always was. As we crossed the main floor, conversations stalled. Eyes followed me. Sympathy, calculation, opportunity. Near the elevator, I spotted Ethan with 2 board members, already rehearsing authority. His tailored suit couldn't hide mediocrity. He nodded solemnly. I should have walked past. Instead, I stopped. "Congratulations, Ethan," I said, loudly enough to draw attention. "One question before I go. Do you remember what HIPAA stands for?" His face flushed. A board member hurried in. "I'm sure Ethan understands compliance regulations." "Of course," I smiled thinly. "I just thought since it governs everything this company does, clarity might help." Ethan swallowed. "Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act," I finished smoothly. 1996. I wrote our first compliance protocols. Blue binder, left shelf of your new office. You'll want it before your Boston General call tomorrow. They're particular. Without waiting for a response, I turned and stepped into the elevator. A small victory, but it felt good, reminding them exactly what they were losing and what he would never be able to replace. Outside, the spring air hit me like truth itself. 15 years entering this building, and now I was banned from it. My keycard already disabled, my email already locked. 15 years erased in 15 minutes. I sat in my car, a sensible Audi I'd chosen to convey success without flash, and finally let myself feel the full gravity of what had happened. The tears came hard, unstoppable. I cried for my lost identity, for sacrifices that suddenly felt meaningless, for a future I'd once believed was secure. But as the sobs faded, that darker fire stirred again, a voice whispering, "They think this is the end of your story. Show them it's only the opening chapter." I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, reapplied my lipstick, and started the engine. I had a 4-ish meeting that could shift everything. The Langham Hotel rose like an elegant challenge to Meridian's glass and steel rigidity, old money versus new tech. I felt oddly at ease among its polished wood and discreet service, maybe because both the hotel and I had witnessed empires rise without losing our dignity. In the tea lounge, Josephine Vega sat alone in a corner. At 55, she carried the assurance of a woman who had never apologized for her ambition. Her silver-streaked black hair framed sharp, intelligent eyes. She stood as I approached. "Maggie," she said, offering her hand. "Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm but not forceful, confident without being overbearing. Everything about her signaled a woman fully at ease with her power. "I was curious," I replied, taking my seat, "and honestly, I didn't have anything better to do today." She smiled at the candor. "Let's order first, then we'll talk about how Meridian just handed me the competitive edge I've been waiting years for." We ordered Earl Grey for her, espresso for me. I needed the bite. "I've followed your work," she said once the server left. 15 years crafting Meridian's operational backbone, their hospital network, their compliance architecture, their client relationships. She leaned in slightly. "You are Meridian, Maggie. Not Warren, not that board of golfing cronies. You." Her words pressed against a wound still raw and aching. "Apparently not," I replied, unable to mask the bitterness sharpening my voice. "Apparently, I'm replaceable by someone whose top qualification is marrying the CEO's daughter." "Warren was always an idiot," Josephine said with effortless disdain, "but his loss is my gain. I want you at Helios, Maggie, not just as an executive, as a partner." I blinked. Partner? Equity? A board seat? Freedom to build without Warren's ego strangling you? She lifted her tea. "I've watched you solve problems at Meridian that we're still wrestling with at Helios. Picture what you could accomplish without Warren second-guessing every innovation." The offer was audacious, almost unbelievable, but 15 years had taught me to be wary. Why trust me with so much? I've been your competition. For all you know, I could be Warren's spy. Josephine laughed, an unrestrained sound that drew glances from nearby tables. "Warren doesn't have the creativity for that kind of maneuver. Besides," her eyes narrowed, "I recognized something in you I know intimately. The look of a woman underestimated her entire career. A woman who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. A woman whose ideas were stolen in conference rooms and watched someone else soak up the applause." She placed her teacup down with surgical precision, and I saw in her expression the unmistakable arrival at a breaking point. Her words struck me like a revelation. She was right. I had reached my breaking point. 15 years of swallowing anger, of smiling through condescension, of watching my work elevated under someone else's name. It had hardened inside me into something volatile. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked, leaning in. Josephine's eyes flashed. "Meridian has won the Mayo Clinic contract renewal 6 years straight. It's up again in 3 months, now worth $47 million annually." I nodded. I had personally led the last 2 renewals. "I want it," she said simply, "and you know precisely how to get it." The Mayo contract, Meridian's crown jewel. I had built that relationship brick by brick, navigating implementation issues, outages, budget battles. I knew every stakeholder, knew whose kids played soccer, knew who needed data and who only cared about results. My non-compete, I began, is strict but ultimately limited, Josephine finished smoothly. My legal team reviewed Meridian's standard executive contract. They can block you from joining us directly for 12 months. They can bar you from recruiting staff, but they cannot stop you from consulting for their clients. The loophole was brilliant. Consulting for Mayo wouldn't breach my non-compete if I played it carefully, and if Mayo then switched vendors after benefiting from my insights, sheer coincidence. Still, I said slowly, why partner status? That's a significant offer for someone you barely know. Josephine placed her cup down again. Because half of something exceptional is better than all of something mediocre. Because I've grown Helios by elevating talent others foolishly throw away. And because, her voice sharpened, I've waited 5 years to see Warren Blackwood's face when he loses Mayo, when he realizes his biggest mistake wasn't firing you, it was creating an enemy who knows every flaw he hides. Her vendetta ran deep, another reason to investigate later. For now, our motivations aligned perfectly. I'd need guaranteed autonomy, I said, already drafting demands in my head. My own team, no interference in how I manage relationships. Done. And a 2-year protection clause if the partnership fails. Fair, I inhaled slowly. Why did they really fire me, Josephine? You have eyes everywhere. What's the real reason? She studied me, deciding how much truth to offer. The Lindale acquisition, she said at last. Warren's announcing it next month. A $2.7 billion deal, the biggest in their history. But their security protocols are a catastrophe. Potential HIPAA violations everywhere. You would have noticed them immediately. Insisted they correct everything before signing. The Lindale Group, of course. The flashy newcomer in prescription management systems, hiding glaring security gaps beneath a polished interface. I'd cautioned Warren about them 6 months ago. Ethan won't catch the compliance failures, I said quietly. He'll be dazzled by the surface-level metrics. Josephine agreed. Warren needed you out before due diligence. You were the only leader he couldn't pressure or sweet-talk into ignoring the risks. The betrayal cut deeper now, realizing they had removed me not in spite of my competence, but because of it. I wasn't just inconvenient for a nepotism hire, I was a threat to their reckless ambitions. I need time, I finally said. This isn't just a career move, it's a full rebirth, she finished gently. I know. Take 48 hours, then call me. She pushed a business card toward me. But remember, your value is at its peak right now, while your insight is sharp and your window for... She paused. Correcting the injustice is strongest before they lock in the relationships you built. Correction of injustice. Such an elegant phrase for what I was considering. When I stepped out of the Lanham, the spring air felt charged with possibility. My phone filled with messages from former coworkers, the brave ones, risking contact. I ignored them, driving aimlessly through Cambridge as my mind attacked every angle. I eventually stopped at Montrose Point, the little overlook where I'd sometimes escape for lunch when the office felt suffocating. The Charles River moved steadily below, patient and calm. Across the water was the Meridian Tower, its upper floors still glowing. Work continued inside, just not with me. My phone rang again, this time a name that surprised me. Dr. Eileen Sawyer, Chief Medical Officer at Mayo Clinic. Maggie, her warm voice carried worry. I just heard. Are you all right? Eileen and I had built more than a professional rapport over the years. We'd navigated late-night integration issues together, swapped novels, laughed when her daughter got into med school. Still processing, I said quietly. How did you find out? Still processing, I admitted. How did you hear? Warren called personally to assure me nothing would change with our service. Her tone made it clear what she thought of that conversation. Said his son-in-law would personally take over the relationship, and I told him we'd need to evaluate our options before committing to renewal. The steel in her voice was unmistakable. Maggie, we chose Meridian because of you, your understanding of our needs, your transparency when problems arise, your solutions, not excuses approach. My chest swelled with vindication. That means a lot, Eileen. It's more than sentiment. The renewal starts in 3 months, but we're beginning vendor evaluation now. We'd value your insights given your unique perspective. It was as direct an invitation as she could ethically offer. I may be available for independent consulting soon, I said cautiously, once I navigate my transition. Excellent. My assistant will reach out next week, she replied. Pausing, she added, For what it's worth, Maggie, their loss is someone else's gain. Remember that. After we hung up, I watched the Meridian Tower as darkness fell, floor by floor, lights winking out. 15 years of my life in that glass monolith. 15 years of achievement they thought could be erased. I thought of Warren's smug expression, Ethan's unearned confidence, the board members who wouldn't meet my eyes, and all I'd sacrificed for a company that discarded me like yesterday's coffee grounds. I made my decision. The next morning, I signed Josephine's partnership agreement. By afternoon, I had office space at Helios's Cambridge location, deliberately placed to be visible from Warren's corner office across the river. By evening, I drafted a consulting proposal for Mayo Clinic that carefully skirted the limits of my non-compete. 3 days after being fired, Natalie, my former assistant, texted, Ethan can't find the Westlake integration documentation. Board meeting disaster. Warren furious. I smiled. The Westlake files weren't missing, they were exactly where they should be, filed under Acquisition Notes, Westlake Final on the shared drive. But without my institutional knowledge, without my mental map of 15 years of systems and processes, navigating Meridian was like wandering a labyrinth blindfolded. I hadn't sabotaged anything, I'd simply stopped being their atlas. 1 week later, I launched my consulting practice, meticulously structured with Josephine's legal team. My first client, Mayo Clinic. My project, evaluating healthcare management systems for their upcoming contract renewal. 2 weeks in, another text from Natalie arrived. They lost the Harborview account today. CFO panicking. Harborview had been wavering for months. I had been the one calming their procurement team, addressing concerns, keeping them loyal. Without me, the relationship crumbled instantly. I wasn't even directly poaching Meridian's clients. I didn't have to. The connections had always been personal, built on trust in me, not the logo. Meanwhile, at Helios, I was building something unprecedented. Josephine had kept her word. Total autonomy, resources at my disposal, no second guessing. I recruited 3 undervalue analysts from Meridian, timing their hires carefully to avoid non-solicitation breaches. Together, we developed a client management system that blended Meridian's best practices with the innovations I had long wanted to implement, blocked by Warren's conservatism. The results were immediate. By month 2, we'd secured 2 mid-size hospital systems that had languished on Meridian's prospect list for years, not by attacking Meridian, but by offering something superior, something I had always dreamed of building. The Mayo evaluation proceeded perfectly. Each meeting revealed Meridian's vulnerabilities, each analysis underscored the risks of their new management approach. Each comparison highlighted Helios's innovative solutions, solving problems Mayo didn't even know existed. Then came the moment that crystallized everything. I was working late, Meridian's lights twinkling across the river, when my phone rang, an unknown number. Maggie Lair, I answered. Maggie, it's Warren. My blood froze, then boiled with fury. The audacity. Warren, I said evenly, this is unexpected.
I think we got off on the wrong foot with your transition, he said, voice tinged with that forced joviality he always used when trying to manipulate. The board has been reassessing the situation. We may have been hasty. Hasty? I repeated flatly. After 15 years? He cleared his throat. The point, he said, is that there might be an opportunity to bring you back in a senior advisory role. The team misses your institutional knowledge. Translation, they were floundering without me. The realization sparked a savage joy I made no effort to hide. That's a generous offer, I said, eyes on Meridian's building across the water. Unfortunately, I'm committed to other projects now. We can be very competitive with compensation, he pressed. Whatever you're getting, we'll beat it. I thought of the Helios partnership agreement, the equity, the board seat, the autonomy, none of which Warren could ever truly provide. It's not about money, Warren. It never was. Then what do you want? Frustration crept into his voice. Name it. What did I want? Revenge had seemed simple at first. Make them suffer, make them regret discarding me. But building something new at Helios, I realized revenge alone wasn't enough. I wanted vindication. I wanted them to fully grasp what they'd lost. I want you to learn your lesson, I said quietly, but I don't think you're capable of that. Don't be childish, Maggie. This is business, sometimes hard decisions. Replacing me with your son-in-law wasn't a hard decision, Warren. It was an easy one, the coward's choice. And now you're facing the consequences. His tone sharpened. If this is about Mayo, this is about 15 years of my life I poured into building something meaningful, something you were willing to risk for nepotism and short-term gain. I paused, letting it sink in. You didn't value what you had, Warren. Someone else does. That's not vindictiveness. That's capitalism. Isn't that what you always preached? After a long silence, he spoke with cold fury. You won't get away with this. The non-compete has been meticulously honored, as your lawyers have surely confirmed. I'm not working directly for your competitors for 12 months. I'm consulting independently. I haven't solicited your employees. They sought me out. Everything I'm doing is perfectly legal. I allowed myself a small smile. I learned contract law by watching you manipulate it for years. This isn't over, he threatened. Actually, Warren, it was over the moment you decided I was disposable. You just didn't know it yet. I hung up, heart racing, but spirits soaring. His call confirmed everything. They were flailing without me. The Mayo account was slipping. The Lindale acquisition was likely revealing the compliance nightmares I had predicted. 3 days later, Natalie sent her most revealing text yet. Lindale deal postponed indefinitely. Board emergency meeting called. Ethan being grilled on due diligence failures. Warren's legacy-defining acquisition was collapsing under the weight of issues I would have caught immediately. Issues Ethan, with his hedge fund experience and 7 months at the company, had completely missed. That weekend, I received an email from Thomas, the CFO, who hadn't been able to meet my eyes the day they fired me. The subject line read simply, "You were right." The message contained a single attachment, board minutes revealing that the emergency session where they'd voted to replace me had actually been scheduled 3 weeks in advance. Warren had lied. About the timeline, about the reasons, about everything. Thomas had finally found his conscience, too late to help me, but just in time to witness the collapse. The Mayo Clinic decision landed exactly as I anticipated. Their evaluation committee recommended switching to Helios's platform, citing innovation, security, and relationship management as decisive factors. The contract, now worth $52 million annually with the expanded services I'd suggested, would transfer when the current agreement expired in 3 weeks. Josephine was elated. "This is just the beginning," she said at our celebration dinner. "With you leading client relationships, we'll secure every major account within 2 years." I smiled, raising my glass to correction of injustice. She clinked hers against mine, and to women who refused to disappear when discarded. The next morning brought news I hadn't foreseen. Meridian's stock had dropped 22% on the Mayo loss announcement. Analysts were questioning the company's stability, and an anonymous source leaked to TechCrunch that the Lindale acquisition had failed due to catastrophic compliance oversight senior management had ignored. I hadn't leaked anything. I didn't need to. Truth surfaces when systems crack. By that afternoon, 3 more hospital networks had contacted me for evaluation consulting for their Meridian contracts. The avalanche had begun. Not because I was actively attacking Meridian, but because I had stopped holding it together. That evening, working late in my Helios office, I received one final text from Natalie. Warren asked for resignation, board unanimous. Ethan also out. They're talking about bringing in a crisis management team. I walked to the window, staring across the river at the Meridian Tower. 15 years of my life in that building.
15 years they thought could be erased with 7 cold words. Your services are no longer required. I hadn't set out to destroy Warren or Meridian. I had simply taken my value elsewhere, built something better, let natural consequences unfold. The most devastating revenge wasn't stealing clients or exposing mistakes. It was showing them, and myself, that I had always been the true source of their success. Without me, the weaknesses I'd covered for years were finally laid bare. Warren had believed Meridian was his creation, his legacy. Now he understood the truth. I hadn't worked for Meridian all those years. Meridian had worked because of me. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. The Mayo Clinic contract finalized, ready for signatures. The first major victory of many to come, not through destruction but creation. Recognized finally for my true value, I signed the document and glanced once more at the Meridian building across the river. Its light seemed dimmer, its presence less imposing. "Goodbye, Warren," I whispered. "Your services are no longer required." Have you ever been underestimated, overlooked despite your contributions, replaced by someone less qualified but better connected? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. What would you have done in my position? Taken Josephine's offer or tried something entirely different? How do you recover when a company you helped build decides you're dispensable? If this story resonated, subscribe for more raw, honest accounts of professional betrayal and sweet, well-earned justice. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, it's building something better from the ashes of what you lost.